It's better to err on the side of caution and be sure that we're confident, we're ready for these different kinds of apps and shows before we expose our child, because they can't unsee what they've already seen. So when it comes to screen time, my biggest recommendation is to make sure that the content your child is consuming is quality content. And to me, quality boils down to three main things. First being that the content is age appropriate, meaning it was developed with your child in mind. It was developed for their age and developmental stage. Two, that the content is educational and or inspiring, not just entertaining. And number three, that it's engaging and interactive. It, calls your child to share their ideas or answer a question or get up and move their bodies. In some way, it's calling your child to interact and engage with the content. Now, there are a lot of options out there. So what I want to do in this episode is share my top recommendations when it comes to movies, TV shows, and apps. And these are going to be perfect for children between the ages of 2 and 10. So let's dive in. Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. I am Dr. Jasmine. I am a clinical psychologist and mom of 3. And I want to give a quick disclaimer before we get into the recommendations. And that is that this is not an exhaustive list. I actually made this list really short and brief for a reason. And personally, when it comes to media, we are the type that we find something we love and we kind of stick to it. We don't do a lot of experimentation, but I want this to be an ongoing conversation. So please share your top recommendations. If you're tuning in on YouTube, share them down in the comments below so we can keep the conversation going and we can keep this inspo going. Okay, so let's dive in. Here are my top favorite movies in no particular order. So one being Toy Story, the series is really fun. Also Finding Nemo, Luck, and the Paw Patrol movie. So those are all rated G. Now G means that it's for the general audience, it's for all ages. Now in terms of PG movies, which means that parental guidance is recommended, it's generally recommended for kids ages 8 and up. That would be Encanto, Moana, Inside Out, and Wish. Those are my favorite. Now keep in mind with these movies, you may need to have conversations with your child about what they are exposed to. Like there's themes of, running away from home. But I do like these movies because I think they do a beautiful job of sharing important themes like family and traditions and culture, as well as leadership and values and doing the right things. Just keep in mind though that you may need to have some important conversations around some of the themes that come up in these movies. In general, though, I will say I tend to be on the conservative side when it comes to movies. I'm very cautious about exposing my little ones to movies because a lot of them are PG, which means they're not really for young kids and they don't really have young kids in mind. A lot of them tend to have, adult related themes like romance and things like that. So I'm very conservative, but I will say those are some of my top favorites and my kids' top favorites. Okay, so let's dive into my favorite TV shows. Keep in mind these all can be found on Netflix and they're all rated TVY, which means they're great for all ages. Now the first one is Word Party. That is perfect for toddlers though. That's for the young crowd. It's really great and engaging. It, calls out, prompts your child to answer questions and get involved, which I really love. Number 2 is Number Blocks, which is a really fun show around math. It has a lot of fun music and songs around learning math. Number 3 is Storytime Books. It's exactly what it sounds like. It reads stories and it's really fun. Number 4 is Octonauts, and number 5 is Storybots. All of these shows are really great. They're educational, they're interactive, and they're engaging, and they're for all ages. So it hits all 3 pillars of quality content in my book. Now let's dive into apps. Okay, so we are a big fan of apps in our home. I, though, am a fan of investing in good quality apps so that I don't have to worry about ads, because that can be a problem with a lot of these apps. So our favorite apps are number one, Epic, which is a digital library full of thousands and thousands of books. It's perfect for kids ages 5 to 12. So the app can either read to your child or your child can read it on their own, or you can read it to them. But it's great. It's a wonderful app full of so many amazing books. And it's so great, especially if you're traveling and you're on the go, because we can still keep up with our reading without having to bring books. Number two favorite app is Pok Pok. We've had this app for years. It's perfect for ages 2 to 7. It's an open-ended, creative app. There's no games or like levels. There's no gamification. It's really open-ended. So there's like areas of the app where your child can build cities, and there's like blocks and drawing and musical instruments. It's so much fun. It's been my kids' like top favorite for years now. We love Pok Pok. Okay, so number 3 is Code Spark, which is owned by the brand Homer, which they also have their own app, which is another one of our favorites. So Code Spark is perfect for kids ages 5 to 9, and it's a coding app. So kids can create their own like video games and stories. It's a lot of fun. It gets them really engaged and creative, which I love. Now I mentioned Homer. So Homer is an app that's about like general education, and it's perfect for ages 2 to 8. Another great like general education app is Lingo Kids, and it's perfect for the same age range, 2 to 8. And I also want to shout out Khan Academy Kids. They're a free app. There's no ads or anything like that. It's a wonderful general educational app, perfect for ages 2 to 7. So I'll be sure to have all the links down below so you can learn more about these apps. And I just, I think when it comes to apps, less is more. Find some good quality ones. They can be an investment, but I feel like it's worth the investment, because you can rest assured that when your child is using screens, they're using quality screens. They're learning, they're engaging with the content, they're getting creative. And sometimes I get the question of like, well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer apps, TV shows, or movies? I think if I had to zoom out and think about, what I prefer and what we commonly use and what my kids use when it comes to screen time, it's apps. I love them because it encourages them to get interactive, get creative, and really respond back to the information that they're consuming. Instead of like movies and TV shows, it tends to be more passive unless you're there as the parent asking them questions and, getting them involved. Or there's a TV show like Word Party where it's prompting them to answer the questions and share their ideas. I think apps in general, though, they tend to be way more interactive and engaging in that way. Now, of course, the gamification of a lot of apps can have like more of an addictive quality. So you want to be sure that you have a really good screen time routine, which brings me to the next part of this episode, which is what our general screen time routine is, because I get a lot of questions about that. So keep in mind, screen time routines, they change, they fluctuate depending on the season, depending on what's going on with our family, depending on if it's a weeknight. But I will say, generally speaking, for weeknights, especially like after school, so what happens is my girls get home from school, they take showers, get tasks done, like if they have a homework assignment or something like that, we get that all out the way, and then we reserve some time for screens if there is time left over. And then we will have dinner, and then sometimes there's extra time to have screen time after that. So they get about an hour and a half-ish, and then we'll go into like our bedtime routine, putting on their pajamas, brushing their teeth, reading our books, and all of that good stuff. Now, when it comes to weekends, we'll either watch like a TV show when the baby goes down for a nap, like in the afternoon, or keep it kind of similar to weeknight schedule where it's kind of in the later afternoon after they've taken their showers and all of that fun stuff. I'm not a huge fan, generally speaking, of screen time in the mornings. I feel like, at least I've seen in my experience and heard from parents, it can have a dysregulating effect, meaning our child has more tantrums, big feelings, more resistance and power struggles after screen time. But I will say, if you are a family where it works for you, I mean, there was a season where we had screen time when I was doing my kids' hair, and it worked really well. When I was pregnant, less energy. I mean, again, screen time routines vary depending on the season that we are in. But I will say, if you're going to do screen time in the mornings, make sure everything else is done. Like breakfast, they're dressed for the day, their backpacks are ready to go, all of that. And then you have screen times, just so that you don't have to worry about any other tasks after screen time is my biggest tip. Now, I do want to note, when it comes to their iPads, they don't have access to Netflix or Disney, definitely not YouTube Kids. We're not a fan of YouTube Kids. I'm happy to do another episode on that. But they don't have access to the shows and movies on their iPad. It's just the apps, like the ones that I mentioned, because I think when we're doing TV shows and movies, I'd like to be, I want a listening ear. I would like to be watching it with them to just kind of help them understand what they're consuming. And also, I just prefer, again, that they do apps instead of sitting back and passively watching a TV show. I think there's a time and place for both, of course, but I just wanted to kind of add that in. Another question I get is, well, does your toddler watch screens? What's his screen time routine looking like? So no, he does not have access to screens. He doesn't have an iPad or anything like that. I will say, there have been little moments in time where the kids are watching yoga, or they're doing an exercise video on YouTube and it's on the big screen, and so he'll watch a little bit of that, but it's not for very long, and it's definitely not on a consistent routine. That's the other thing, though, I forgot to mention. There are other fun ways that we incorporate screens that I wanted to be sure to mention. So speaking of YouTube, I did mention that I'm not a fan of YouTube Kids or kids having access to YouTube on their own, but I think that YouTube can be a wonderful resource, and there are ways that we incorporated it into our screen time routine that I want to just briefly talk about. So YouTube has wonderful drawing tutorials that my girls love. So they love to watch a drawing tutorial and draw along with it. That's been a wonderful resource for them because they love to get creative and they love drawing specifically. So I really see YouTube as a wonderful way to learn and teach our kids different skills. Along those same lines, watching short form educational content. I remember my little one was doing a school assignment on public figures, and so we watched quick bite-sized informational videos on YouTube that really helped her kind of learn the material in an age-appropriate way. And then the other way is, like I mentioned, doing yoga and exercise videos and dance videos. It's a wonderful way, especially if the weather is not great, for them to stay active at home. So I definitely am a fan of that. But going back to my 18-month-old, generally, when it comes to the recommendations for screen time, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that kids don't have access to screens until at least 18 months old. They do say FaceTime does not count as screen time, so that's perfectly fine. But when it comes to movies, TV shows, app, generally speaking, it's recommended 18 months and up. We have decided as a family to wait until closer to age 2 before we have screen time routine. And I just feel in general, when it comes to screens, it's better to wait if you're having any reservations or any concerns, because I feel once you open Pandora's box, it's a lot harder to stop. It's a lot harder to close the box or pivot and say, oh, never mind. Of course, we can do that at any time. We're allowed to change our minds. And if you're watching this and you're oh, wait, I'm allowing my toddler to have screen time and I felt uncomfortable about it and maybe I'm reconsidering, we can always change our mind. I just feel it's better to err on the side of caution and be sure that we're confident, we're ready for this transition, we're ready for these different kinds of apps and shows before we expose our child, because they can't unsee what they've already seen. So yeah, that is another reason why I'm a fan of iPads and tablets, because they allow for more flexibility. My girls could be on their iPad at the table or at the couch, and my toddler is not exposed to the screens, if you will. This, allows for greater flexibility, at least for our family, and it's been working well for us. But let us know down in the comments below, what are some really good quality movies, TV shows, or apps that you've come across that your kid loves and that you've been really impressed with? Leave them down in the comments below so we can continue this conversation. Also, if you're struggling with discipline, with cooperation, and you want to find research-based practical solutions for how to get your child to listen to you without constantly yelling and dishing out threats, definitely check out my free discipline workshop. You can go to themomspsychologist.com/workshop for all the details. Again, that's themomspsychologist.com/workshop for all of the details. All right, that is it for this episode. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.